Very good morning, guys. So one thing I told Justin about this place is it just feels so cozy. I absolutely love it. Last time I was making a presentation was a slightly bigger room. I think about 100 people. So yeah, it just feels like you just have your audience right in front of you, which is really good. So I'm happy to be here. That's just extensively what I'm trying to say. All right. My name is Faruk Suleiman. I'm a solutions engineer at Laserfiche. I've been with Laserfiche for just about 5 years now. Prior to Laserfiche, I was a customer of Laserfiche. I fell in love with the product. I did amazing things for 5 years, and then I literally said, I actually want to get into the action. So I moved into Laserfiche. Justin and I, we go way back. I trained him, as he said, and the relationship has been very beneficial. He is an amazing solutions engineer, and we do a lot with the product. So today I will be talking about elevate customer onboarding with Laserfiche. But before I get into that, I would like to give you a little bit of insight into who we are as a company and what we do. So Laserfiche is a privately held company that does document management. At the very minimum, we mostly just say enterprise content management, but a lot of people will say, hey, isn't that like a fancy terminology for document management? And we just consider, oh, yeah, it is actually. So we've been in the business for over 40 years. We are a US-based company based out in Long Beach. We do have 8 offices in 8 cities across 5 continents. We have our European operation based out in Dublin, Ireland. We have office in London, HQ obviously in the US in Long Beach, but we have offices in Asia as well. So in terms of what we do, we have over 400 employees worldwide, but we are a global community in terms of what we provide. We are industry agnostic, so we pretty much service every single industry you can imagine. Not every single process, but most of the processes that you would typically have in a sector. So here we are. So we do very well in government, especially in the US. Education is an area that we've excelled extensively in the US as well. Finances in Europe, we do very well with wealth management. Manufacturing, quite a bit of that in the US, not so much in Europe, and of course, healthcare. We do have a couple of NHS accounts in the UK. So, as recently as October 2024, we were named a leader in the Magic Quadrant for document management. So this is from Gartner. That is a highly respected metric that is used to measure document management and enterprise content management. So in terms of what we provide, we do provide quite a few services. So if I were to break it down into three, that will be process automation, content services, and platform services. So under process automation, we have workflow automation, which is the engine that we use to build a lot of processes. So we do really well with intelligent capture and electronic form to capture information and data, and then the workflow processes that data into pretty much anything you want it to do. So in terms of content services, we have the content repository. So the repository is at the heart of the Laserfiche offering. It is a centralized location where you can store any entry type. So any entry type that you can store in a Windows file system, you can essentially store it in Laserfiche. So that takes care of your document management needs. But once they are in Laserfiche, what can you do with them? Then you can, put together some processes to intelligently identify the type of content you have and what you would want to do with the data that is contained in that content. So once you have that ready, we have records management. So for compliance purposes and governance, you might want to set a retention policy for your document to say, oh, I want to keep this document for maybe 5 years. After that, I want to destroy the document, or maybe I want to accession the document, or maybe I'm just not going to do anything, but I just want to be sure that it is safe. So we have platform services, and this is an area that is increasingly important in our product mix. The ability to integrate. So you've heard the amazing things you can do with Mesh ID and Process Pro. With Laserfiche, we have no concerns. If you have your systems that work very well for you, we don't have to replace them, right? We're not in the business of replacing every system. We are there to provide value. And if that comes with integrating with Laserfiche, then absolutely that is something we do very well. So just a little bit more in depth into process automation. So think about the ability to pretty much work with any document, regardless of the source of document. That document is contained in an email. We have an integration with Office. It has the ability to automatically ingest any email, the attachment, or any other information that is contained in that email that can automatically be routed into the repository. You have a document in your file system, and you don't have the ability to create an API to handle that. That's fine. We have a utility that can monitor literally any network drive and can bring in any kind of content automatically into Laserfiche and can intelligently identify and classify those documents. You think about, well, what if, I just have a document right now that, I want to bring into Laserfiche. We have different methods you can deploy to bring in documents, but of course, we do have the ability to integrate with different systems. So in terms of return on investment, we do have a lot of templates that you can use. These are pre-built, widely used processes that you can just download, and you can modify them to fit your business needs, or if they're good enough for you, you can just deploy and start using them from day one. So in terms of intelligent data capture, there's a lot that you can do with structured and unstructured documents. It's always difficult to deal with unstructured documents, but then that takes me back to the workflow engine that we have. It is really strong. It has a lot of capabilities. So we can OCR any entry that has any text in the repository, and once we do that, we can deploy a lot of logic. So some of it can be machine learning, some of it can be AI driven with integration with any tool that does have the ability to understand natural language. And once you're able to process that data, you can bring it back into Laserfiche. With that, you can then skip the manual entry and you can just make your content easily accessible. And as the previous speaker has said, you want it to be as accurate as possible. So in terms of documents and records management, you get the ability to manage, control, and maintain regulatory compliance with your Laserfiche repository. You have all your content in one location, in a centralized location that is accessible, and it is also role-based controlled. So not every user who has access to the repository would be able to access documents that do not, relate to that individual. So we make sure that access is very well managed and controlled across the entire repository. So now I will talk a little bit more about onboarding. So we all know first impression really matters. So think about the first time you meet a prospect, a client. You're always just putting so much effort into making sure that whatever value you're bringing to the table is one that eventually would lead to signing that customer or just bringing that customer on board. And how you onboard that customer is really, really important. So a typical example I would give is a HR process. So it all starts with the hiring process. And, you want to make sure that whoever is going to show any interest in that job has a really good experience, how you collect the data, how you provide information about the job role, and that consistency, which is very important. Like from day one, I am interested in this job, and there is a portal that I go into, and I would like to apply for the job. Laserfiche can actually be that portal. It has the ability to provide all the data that you need to kick off that process. And internally, as that data is being fed or is being responded to, you are taking in that data and you are structuring the entire process. You're building that experience, and that experience is all within your control, and that's amazing. So onboarding is also a gateway to customer loyalty, as well as to ensure that compliance obligations are met. So in terms of financial institutions, there is a research that has shown up to 20% of potential clients are lost during lengthy onboarding process. So you want to shorten that. As the previous speaker said, it is painful. There's nothing you can do about that, but you can make it less painful. And we know there are consequences when people feel that, oh my God, this is an extended process. I'm just tired. I'm just going to abandon it and move on. So compliance risks increase with manual document handling and inconsistent procedures. So we all know that. We know the consequence. You just assume this is the data that you've extracted, or this is the data that you've collected, without the ability to process, to handle that information in a correct way. It could lead to compliance problems. So staff spend about 60 to 80% of their time on administrative tasks rather than value-adding client services. So if you have a really good onboarding process, you're able to channel a lot of your resources into value-added processes. And of course, we know that it has a positive correlation in reducing your operational cost. So I do have some metrics that I just want to share with you. So why does customer onboarding matter? It does for a lot of reasons. So let's start with productivity. So a lot of businesses that have a well-defined, a well-established customer onboarding process have reported up to 11% increase in productivity. 20% of businesses that have a formal onboarding process have recorded an increase in manager satisfaction when employees go through the process end to end. And 25% increase in retention due to onboarding program is something that has been recorded by a lot of businesses that have been surveyed. And then 54% of companies with onboarding programs reported higher employee engagement, which is really, really good. It talks about, how engaged they are, how, really connected they feel to your business. So I believe Justin did talk about people. He talked about technology, and he talked about culture. So all of that matter. They all fit into that success that you want to have in your onboarding process. And we're beginning to see there's a positive correlation with employee engagement. And then 77% of employees who have formal onboarding processes do meet the performance goals. So that is an objective that every business wants to achieve. So you want to make sure that all your objectives are met. 100%, 50%, that's entirely up to you. How do you get that? You certainly want to make sure that you have all the processes in place to help you get to that level. So what is Laserfiche role in all of this? Laserfiche is industry agnostic, like I've said. I can sit here and talk to you about customer onboarding in wealth management, and I can go to the next room and talk about customer onboarding in manufacturing. I can go to another room and talk about customer onboarding in higher education. So we do that very well. And we don't excel just because we have the ability to build an end-to-end process, but no, we have the ability to integrate with other systems that do different roles, that play different roles in the onboarding process. So we've seen a lot of what Pro Plus and Mesh ID can do. We can integrate with that. We can just simply be the repository, or we can have different exchanges in terms of how we collect data and how they collect data, and we can both process the data and exchange the data via API. So certainly Laserfiche plays that role as an orchestrator. Okay, once you have an established process that you want to maintain, then what you need to do is you need to decide what exactly is Laserfiche adding to the system. and there's a lot of opportunities to integrate. Once that is done, then you also have the option to have that centralized repository where every single data or entry that is generated across different systems can be stored in Laserfiche. Once you have that, you have the ability to search for that document either within Laserfiche, or you can just call an API to pull an entry, a document, or any data that is contained or associated with that entry. So I'm going to talk about two scenarios in terms of how you want to look at customer onboarding. So we have the business process. This allows you to deploy the powerful Laserfiche form that enables collection of information and also facilitate seamless communication. So we've seen a bit of that with Mesh ID. That is amazing, and we can complement that process, or we can work side by side with that process to capture maybe a different set of data. And that's really one thing I love about Laserfiche. We're not always competing to take away functions of processes that have been deployed and serve a very, big role in your organization. We're just there to help you facilitate that digitization journey. We have automated workflows that enable you to route documents and trigger approvals, as well as autofill system like your CRM system, or even call Mesh ID for validation of identification documents. And then we have our powerful API. So that is what will be the primary communication channel between Laserfiche and any third-party application that you would use for any part of your onboarding process. And once all of that is done, we have audit trail. So that audit trail can be consumed from external applications that may have multiple processes that have been conducted as part of the onboarding process. We can consume that, and for every interaction that occurs within Laserfiche, we maintain our audit trail as well. So you have full transparency into what exactly is going on with your process. So the second scenario is capture. So we have the ability to ingest output. That could be any kind of output. It could be a verified ID, it could be compliance report, like I said. And once that is ready, we can consume it in any way. So in terms of how you want to view it, we have the ability to process data in different forms, and we can represent it in any way you would want it to be represented. Or we could say we will just store the data, and if you need access to that data, you can just open it in that native application. So it doesn't take away the source of that document or how you would want that to be visualized. So that is still there, but you do have that easy accessibility with Laserfiche. So we have governance and as well as security. We have the ability to apply retention policies, encryption, and role-based access. So these are points that I've already talked about, but I just wanted to emphasize those points. And of course, once you have all of that in your repository, you do want to have that ability to search for content. So that be document name, it could be any information that is contained within that content. So we do have that amazing ability to search for contents within across the repository. So I know that Justin is gonna put everything together, but I just thought, well, maybe I can just do my put together as well. So in terms of real world use cases, this is how you can actually bring the three solutions together. So we're not really like three siloed systems here. We could be very integrated systems. So we have Process Pro, which we've seen a bit of that. The entire onboarding journey can be visually mapped in there in the process library that we've seen. And once that is mapped, we can understand the different roles each stakeholder has within the onboarding process, and that would be able to call Laserfiche. So once we have that call into Laserfiche, we have the ability to then launch dynamic digital forms, and that would collect data that is important for the onboarding process. Laserfiche workflows would be deployed to automatically call Mesh ID and to kick off the e-onboarding process that we've actually seen within the Mesh ID process. So documents that have been created or generated or signed off can be sent back into Laserfiche, stored with our document governance, which we call records management. And we apply retention policies across every single document that we have in Laserfiche repository. And then in terms of Mesh ID, we do have the ability to then verify government documents through that API connection that we'll be making into Mesh ID. It performs its AI-powered fraud checks and returns verification status to Laserfiche. So you can see that it's not a one-off process. It is a process that would happen across the entire onboarding process. Once your documents are back into Laserfiche repository, you have the ability to search for that document or documents or any information related to any content that you've stored in the Laserfiche repository. And yeah, so one key message that I want to leave here is the role Laserfiche plays. It does unify niche tools like Mesh ID and Process Pro by acting as the central command center for compliant audit-ready document management. And yeah, with that, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.